Hunting northern Idaho was definitely a draw card for its unlimited non-resident over-the-counter tags and large wilderness areas open for public hunting, but I also chose it for another reason. To get there, it first meant we travelled to the hunting mecca and neighbouring western state of Montana, and in particular, the small town of Missoula. It was there, prior to the hunt, that I planned to meet some very special people that work in an organisation that play a crucial role in this story. Located just north of town is the headquarters of the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. Bound by the mission statement of hunting is conservation, this member-based group has been responsible for preserving a staggering amount of habitat for public use while directly funding and assisting in the recovery and preservation of huge numbers of elk across the US. The head office and visitor centre at Missoula gives people a thorough insight into their conservation programs through interactive displays, and for hunters, the trophy room holds a jaw-dropping collection of mounts and taxidermy. After a fascinating tour of the complex, I caught up with Blake Henning to learn more. Blake, as a hunter and conservationist myself, it's really a privilege to be here with you today in this magnificent building, your headquarters here in Missoula, Montana. For those that aren't familiar with the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, can you fill us in on what you're all about?
Yeah, the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation is a nonprofit charitable wildlife conservation and hunting heritage organization. We have about 200,000 members nationally, and we are focused on ensuring the future of elk, other wildlife, their habitat, and our hunting heritage here in the United States and Canada.
So who were the founding members of the organisation and how was it formed?
There were 4 gentlemen from Troy, Montana that formed the organization in 1984, and so we've been around nearly 30 years. Those founders were interested in enhancing habitat and focusing on really the monarch of the West, the elk.
Mm-hmm. And no doubt these were hunters themselves.
They were hunters themselves, absolutely.
So in your 30 years of existence, you've achieved some excellent results for hunting and conservation. Let's go through those now.
Well, the big number that we talk about is 6.3 million acres improved or enhanced across the country. A part of that 6.3 million acres, there's 1 million acres of land permanently protected. There's about 640,000 acres of lands open to hunter access that were not open before. And then elk restoration is a very popular topic right now, and we've helped restore elk in 7 states, most recently in Virginia and Missouri, out in the eastern part of the United States.
We should clarify here that those elk have been gone for a long time in those eastern states, haven't they?
Yes, elk had been extirpated for nearly 150 years in those states.
That was due to basic overhunting and meat trade and fur trade.
You know, I think mostly overhunting. You're talking about back in the early 1800s where subsistence hunting for meat took most of them out.
So take us through how a program runs for restoring elk.
Well, first of all, the people of that state have to be interested in bringing elk back. They're a large animal, and there are going to be some challenges with having elk back in a fairly populated state such as Missouri or Virginia. Secondly, the State Wildlife Agency has to be on board. They want to have to bring them on. They need to seek our cooperation. We want to cooperate, we want to be there, but they're really the folks in charge of bringing them back. And we encourage a feasibility study, so we look at social, economic, and habitat requirements of the state. Can they handle elk from all those sources of input? And once those things are kind of analyzed and put together, the State Wildlife Agency will make a decision. And if the decision is to go, then the Elk Foundation comes in with money and people to support the effort. Mm-hmm. And the next thing we're doing is trying to locate the elk that will move back to that state.
So some serious resources and time and money and effort go in before those elk jump out of the trailer.
Oh, absolutely. We can spend 2 or 3 years planning, analyzing, and getting ready. Restoration efforts will cost well over $1 million at times, and you're talking about moving elk thousands of miles back to these states.
And these are completely wild animals that are...
Completely wild, yes. Yeah, no game farm, no pen-raised animals is a part of a restoration that we're going to do.
On a personal level, I think it's fantastic that some of the land you're actively pursuing and reopening and conserving is not just for hunters, even though you're a group of hunters, it's for everyone.
Yes, absolutely. There's many benefits to protecting land or enhancing habitat out there. There are well over 30 to 40 species that generally occupy the same kind of habitat that elk do. And so while hunters often pay the bills and support this kind of work, hikers, campers, bird watchers all benefit from the work that we're doing.
It's something you should be very proud of.
We are very proud of it. Yes, and part of our mission statement is other wildlife. So we're not just focused on elk. We want to help everything out there.
And that must really aid in the perception of hunting. I saw some figures that you just showed me before, and you're saying that perception, public perception of hunting is at an all-time high.
It certainly is, and I think groups like ours are trying to tell the story of hunters and what they've done. Well over several $1 billion hunters have put into wildlife conservation in the last 100 years in North America. So they really have supported it with their pocketbook, and not just so they can harvest something. It's so they can enjoy the outdoors and take their families along and enjoy the traditions of it.
We've spoken about the past. What's the current situation and what's in store for the future?
Well, currently, elk populations are pretty strong. I mean, there are some places in isolated areas where predators have had impacts, but nationally, if you look at, nearly 1 million elk or so across the country, opportunities for hunters are good, and we just need to kind of spread the word about how hunting is conservation and the role that hunters play in the work that we do. And then access, too, is a key point for hunters. Really, the number one reason today why hunters stop hunting is lack of access. And so we really see our role out there in the future is helping improve and open up access to either private or public lands, and bringing resources to bear so we can have more hunters and folks out in the field.
Well, congratulations. I think it's a fantastic effort what you're doing here. I think it's a privilege for Andrew and I to be able to come over here from Australia and get an over-the-counter tag and trek into the wilderness and hopefully have a shot at an elk. I'm going to go over and proudly sign up today. Hopefully some more people from Australia will, but it's good to know that your message is reaching far and wide.
Well, thank you very much for coming, and we really appreciate your support, your membership, and I wish you the best out there in central Idaho getting after those elk.